Hey, what's going on, guys? It's your boy, Nerd Mode On, and welcome to episode 1 of Battle Reports, a video series where I'll be going over a particular weapon in Battlefield 1 and breaking down the statistics of the weapon to provide you guys with a better idea of how the weapon will perform on the battlefield. Now today we're actually going to be talking about the CEI-Rigotti. Now of course this weapon is actually more commonly known as the CEI gas rifle, which is an early automatic rifle that was created in the 19th century. Now, a very interesting fact about this particular rifle is that it did have a selective fire capacity, so of course you were able to shoot this rifle in single shot, or you were also able to shoot it in a burst fire mode. Now, this rifle in real life is fed through a fixed box magazine loaded through a stripper clip, and reportedly prototypes with magazines up to 50 round capacities did exist during this time period. Now, considering Battlefield 1 is set in World War I, of course we do see a lot of really cool advancements when it comes down to the technology that was present during this particular time period, but we're also able to use weapons that were not manufactured in large quantities, which being the CEI-Rigotti, this was actually a weapon that was not manufactured in such a large quantity due to some of the limitations that it did have while testing. Now, while this rifle in the real world may function a little bit different in comparison to the Battlefield series, let's talk a little bit about the rate of fire and the velocity, considering that there are definitely indiscrepancies when we talk about the Battlefield version versus the real life version of this rifle. So the real life version of this rifle did have a rounds per minute clocking in at 900 rounds per minute. So of course it was definitely very high up there. It did have the ability to go fully automatic, which would definitely allow the rifle to reach such a high rate of fire. However, in the Battlefield series, we're definitely going to see an indiscrepancy here due to the fact that this weapon in-game is only permitted with a 299 rounds per minute, of course trying to make it a little bit more balanced. So when we take a look at the velocity, you guys will notice that in-game this weapon has a 660 meters per second velocity, so of course that is actually pretty comparable when it talks about how the real-life version would compare. Now, the real-life velocity for the CEI-Rigotti was actually 730 meters per second, so of course we're really not seeing a whole lot of deviation here, so of course the Battlefield series is actually sticking pretty true when it talks about the velocity of this particular rifle. Now, moving right along to the damage model, you guys will notice that the CEI-Rigotti does have a maximum damage of 38 damage up until approximately 24 meters. Now, after approximately 24 meters, you guys will notice a gradual decline of the overall damage being outputted at range. Now, as we come to approximately 47 meters, you guys will notice that the minimum damage is 26.5. So, of course, in layman's terms, all this really means is that this rifle requires approximately 2 to 4 rounds in order to kill a single player. Now, when you consider that this particular rifle has a maximum capacity of 10 rounds within the rifle, of course you're definitely going to be wanting to aim for those headshots due to the fact that they do a lot more damage to individual players. Now, since Battlefield 1 is altering the ideologies of how the reload system has been for a lot of first-person shooters, this time around we have a lot of new characteristics of the reloading system. The Battlefield franchise is opting into new concepts when they talk a little bit about some of the reloading characteristics that are going to be present during this particular iteration. So during World War I, you do see the adoption of 5-round stripper clips, and these were especially apparent when it talks about some of the rifles that we'll be using for the medic class especially. This was an extremely effective way at reloading a lot of the rifles, considering that it also maintained the amount of ammunition that a single soldier could fire. So this concept was extremely beneficial to soldiers, especially when it came down to limiting the amount of ammunition that they could put in their rifle as well as fire. But this process also served as the ability to reload the rifle by itself. So of course you do see a dual function in this particular case, which ultimately does allow them to be more effective on the battlefield. Now, since these rifles are actually interchangeable in many different ways, considering that you can actually go from this rifle to a different one without too many limitations in terms of your performance. This is exceptionally beneficial when trying to understand the fundamentals of this particular category, considering that this is actually very similar to the DMR category from a modern Battlefield title. Now, when you consider that the CEI-Rigotti unfortunately is not going to be classified as one of the overpowered weapons in the Battlefield 1 open beta, that definitely does not go without saying that it does not have great attributes overall. Considering that this weapon definitely has the ability to do a lot of damage to flesh targets, of course you're going to notice that your ability to drop players is sufficiently higher than a fully automatic weapon at medium and long range. Now, when you take into consideration that the CEI-Rigotti does have a bayonet, and of course there is a function in Battlefield 1 that allows you to do a bayonet charge, this process does make you extremely vulnerable to incoming rounds, considering that you do not have the ability to return fire. However, if you do make contact with an enemy players, you will definitely thrust them into the ground with the bayonet. So of course it can be extremely beneficial and you will yell enjoy when it does occur. Now considering that we do have a couple of different variations in this build of Battlefield 1, you'll notice that there is also the CEI-Rigotti Refactory, which unfortunately doesn't have a whole lot of great attributes in comparison to the artillery version. One of the limiting benefits of using the factory version over the artillery is that you do have the ability to use the iron sights, which of course will increase the amount of vision that you do have while trying to engage targets. The iron sights of default weapons can be very beneficial in CQB moments, considering that they do not get lost in the housing of the overall sight, so of course take this into consideration, but for the most part I feel like the artillery sights are actually pretty beneficial when it comes down to it. So the CEI-Rigotti is extremely effective against humanoid targets due to the flesh nature of these beings. In these specific cases, it is most definitely notable to try to use this weapon in more of a defensive playstyle, considering that it does not necessarily facilitate the aggressive nature that submachine guns occupy on the battlefield. But anyway guys, I hope you found something in the video insightful and or entertaining, but until the next episode guys, this has been NMO, and I'm going to be signing out guys. Peace!